Well, hello everyone, and welcome to UXI-115 UX Process and Theories. And in this week, week 4, we are discussing information architecture. So let's get started. So in this course, we're going to discuss today's agenda. So in regards to today's agenda, we're going to do a course overview. Also, we're going to do an overview of week 4. I'm also going to provide you with some resources as well as some reminders. So you can find the live session saved underneath the web meetings. So you can always go back for future reference. And I will also leave the slides for this live session under the announcements. I will post this live session slides next week because I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I do want to take the time to go over week 4 while we are in week 3 because we do not meet next week. You can have your video on or off in this session. I completely understand if you have to have your video off. And I just ask that you mute your mic, but if you have to unmute your mic, say for instance, you're having issues viewing the slides or volume issues, definitely let me know, or you can send some information over in the chat. I would love for you to engage in the chat. I have some questions to ask throughout this live session. So let's go ahead and get started. So a course overview. In this course, you will learn key theories and processes to help you create usable, useful, and delightful products that answer users' needs. You will also work with software tools such as Adobe XD and Figma. So for the course project, throughout this course, you will focus on redesigning an existing restaurant's mobile app by identifying problems, performing user research, producing and improve product design, and conducting usability testing. So the goal for this project in the course is to produce a better user experience in the existing restaurant app and create a UX case study asset to add to your growing capstone portfolio. So we're going to go ahead and dive into week 4 overview. And the topic of discussion is, what is information architecture? So I have a poll that I would love for you guys to engage and drop your answers in the chat. You can send them directly to me. I would like to know, have you heard of information architecture? You can type yes, a 1 for yes and a 2 for no. All right, let's see where you guys are. Okay, so we have a few yeses and some no's, and that is okay. Hopefully by the end of this live session, you'll have an understanding of what information architecture is and how you will apply it in the UX Process and Theories course. All right. So what is information architecture? So our week 4 overview, this week we will be discussing information architecture, the discipline of organizing, structuring, and labeling content so that users can complete tasks. We will examine different types of user activities to complete this, such as card sorting, tree sorting, and also journey mapping. So it is best to start the assignments for week 4 early because it's a lot to cover. So some objectives for week 4. The topic again is information architecture. We're going to explain how to build information architecture to organize and support usability and findability. Also,
identify planning exercises to help organize design solutions. We'll also perform card sorting and or tree testing. And then we are going to cover how to create a user flow and customer journey maps. So, to give you a definition of information architecture, it is a discipline that focuses on the organization of information within digital products. And I know that sounds like a mouthful, so I'm going to break down why it is important. So, information architecture helps to make information more accessible to users and to improve the overall usability of websites and other digital platforms. Also, it helps to improve communication and collaboration within an organization by providing a clear and consistent way to gain and access and share information. So when you are creating your, uh, say for instance, you're rebuilding your restaurant's mobile app, you want to understand that you want to start off with IA, which is information architecture, before you start building out your UI elements. And so we'll dive more into that. So some examples of information architecture or IA are sitemaps, content inventory and audit, mapping out the information architecture diagram, labeling, and wireframes. And I'm sure that you guys have heard of at least one of these examples. So in this video, they're going to go over an overview of information architecture in UX, the design. So please let me know if you have any issues viewing or hearing the video.
Information architecture is a fancy word for how information is structured on a website or mobile app. Someone who studies information architecture or design is tasked with arranging information to be understandable and easily findable. The optimal structure depends on the different objectives and goals of the user, as well as the type of product, service, or website. An e-commerce website will inherently have a much different information architecture than a website for a dental practice. A company like Walmart has millions of different items in their inventory. Organizing and categorizing that information in a way that is findable to the average consumer is not a small undertaking. When you land on Walmart's homepage, you can drill down into many different department options, such as electronics and office, clothing, shoes and accessories, home improvement, etc. When you drill into electronics and office, you'll see additional categories such as TV, video, home, audio and theater, cell phones, and much more. You can keep moving down the categories until you find the item that you're looking for. Consumers have limited attention spans, so if the information isn't organized effectively, they get annoyed and give up. While IA is extremely important for UX design, it is also important for marketing and SEO. Good information architecture can help improve SEO. Having good SEO allows you to rank higher on search engines like Google. There are a few ways to improve the information architecture of a product or website. Conduct a card sort to see how participants naturally group items together. You can use Playbook UX or similar card sorting softwares to accomplish this. We've created a video on this topic, but to summarize, a card sort involves writing items on separate cards. In Walmart's case, they would write sneakers, heels, lotion, perfume, etc. Optionally, define certain categories as accessories, shoes, clothing, and have participants sort the cards into those categories. You can also leave it open-ended and let the participants create the categories that make sense to them. Once you've analyzed your card sort and created a navigation structure, conduct a tree test. A tree test is basically a reverse card sort. Tree test softwares like Playbook UX allow you to create a tree, with each node representing your categories. Then you can write a list of tasks such as imagine you want to find fragrances. Where would you look to find that? Participants will click into the category where they expect to find the item. Tally up how many times the participant successfully and directly went to the correct path. Went to the wrong path? Initially went to the wrong path, but eventually found the correct path. Having a tally of those items can track your progress. Consider redoing the card sort to improve the paths that score poorly. Analyzing competitor websites is also a helpful way to get a sense of how other companies are solving their IA problems.
So that's just an overview of information architecture. So we're going to dive in a little bit deeper to get a better understanding of how you can apply information architecture into your course project. So the different types of user activity, they spoke about cart sorting. So cart sorting helps design or evaluate the information architecture of a website or application. Tree sorting is when data is too large to be sorted, like in a tree-like structure. And then also the most popular is journey mapping. So you visualize and understand customers as they interact with an organization. And so when it comes to your customer journey, this is something that you're going to apply in week 4, and you're going to also create your own customer journey for the restaurant app that you are going to be redesigning. So in this video, they're going to just do an overview of how to create a customer journey map.
UX. In this video, I'll be covering the definition of a customer journey map and when to use it, preparing the data, materials, and people for a customer journey workshop, components of customer journey map, creating the template deliverables for your customer journey, and your role as a facilitator. I also included a link to a downloadable customer journey map in the description. All right, let's jump into it. What is a customer journey workshop? The customer journey workshop is a process of laying out the steps a customer takes, along with the series of touch points and feelings your customer has towards your product or service. A journey mapping workshop helps companies do 3 things. 1. Facilitate a common understanding between team members. 2. Identify the gaps in the customer experience. And 3. Explore potential new opportunities. In order to build products your customers love, you need to understand what they're experiencing when they interact with your product or service. In this video, we are going to be focusing on a high-level, end-to-end customer journey map. However, there are many different types of customer journey maps, and I outline the different types in another video if you want to learn more. So prior to starting the workshop, you want to make sure you have a few things prepared to make it successful. First, you should identify your primary persona. When working in customer experience design, it is important to focus on 1 or 2 primary customers. Other disciplines like marketing will have many personas, each having different demographics and characteristics that they can target. For UX, let's focus on targeting 1 persona that represents your main customer. Second, you should gather as much research as you can and make sure everyone in the room is briefed on the latest research. You can pull information from previous customer satisfaction surveys, support logs, analytics, competitive intelligence, and any other previous customer research you have conducted. I will touch on the specifics of each type of research in another video, but you can use research like moderated interviews, unmoderated interviews, contextual inquiries, surveys, diary studies, card sorting, and so on. It's important to make sure everyone in the workshop has a good base understanding of the customer you are creating the journey for. If you're starting without any research, we would recommend you go back and do some research to guide your workshop. Next, you should assemble the dream team. You're going to want people representing all functional areas of the business, including development, design, marketing, and operations. This will be different for every company, but think about key areas of your product or service and make sure people from those departments are participating. Ideally, you want a comprehensive team, but you don't want more than 8 people. More than 8 people can derail productivity. Lastly, you should prepare the materials. It is often helpful to have a template to work from. There are multiple different templates that you can use, but most of them have relatively the same components and will get the job done. In this video, we're going to start with the basics. However, feel free to customize it to meet the needs of your organization. It is also helpful to have a big whiteboard or printout of the template to stick on a wall. During the workshop, you should give everyone in the room a pad of sticky notes and markers. Let's jump into the template. The customer journey map template is a large grid. Across the top of the grid, it outlines the different stages the customer goes through while engaging with your product or service. Moving across the columns, the first box is the awareness stage, where the customer is trying to learn about the potential new solutions to their problem and recognizing a need. Next, we have the researching stage, where the customer is researching potential solutions. This varies widely by product. Some products customers typically make instant purchasing decisions, where other products customers spend endless hours researching, since there may be high switching costs. Next is the selection stage. This is where the customer makes the conscious decision to use your product. After that, we have the delivery stage. Once the customer has selected your product, how do they receive it? What happens? Lastly, we have the follow-up stage. What follow-up does the company do after the customer has consumed the product or service? Here, you want to focus on how do we retain customers or push them into being an advocate of your product. Let's dive into what's contained in the rows. We're going to start with what the customer is doing during each of the stages that we just listed. Write down the customer's behaviors and actions. Next, we want to understand what the customer is thinking. What are their thoughts, feelings, motivations, or needs at each stage? Are there any questions they need answered? Next, we have touch points. Those are each point of interaction between the customer, product, and company. Is there any communication or messaging? How are you doing that? Are you using a mobile app or website, or is it in person? Then we have customer pains. What things do we know are pains for the customer at each stage of the process? Our goal in outlining these pains is to address them and find solutions for them. The last row is opportunities. This is a summary of the problems and questions customers have, as well as identifying potential opportunities that you can deliver to your customer. These are your action steps coming out of the customer journey and drive your product roadmap and research opportunities. The facilitator role is extremely important. The facilitator encourages everyone in the group to collaborate and keeps the meeting on track. As a facilitator, you should start by having a group brainstorm, using the boxes as guidelines, starting with the awareness stage. The group can write out each activity on a sticky note, paste it in that box on the journey mapping template. You're going to have to keep moving box by box until you finish the journey map. Your goal is to have everyone working together and feeding off one another. Following the workshop, you should convert everything written on the sticky notes into a shareable document. Also, remember that the customer journey map is a living document and it should evolve and change as the product or service matures. Make sure to display the
All right, you guys. So for this, they're describing a customer journey map workshop, which means you will have a team of people. But for this project, you are the team. So you are going to create this customer journey map, and I'll discuss that later on. But this is something that you will apply in week 4. So you can understand the users and help build a better user experience for the restaurant app that you're going to be redesigning. So let's discuss user flow. So user flow is a chart or diagram showing the path of a user that the user will take in application to complete a task. It depicts the physical journey of the user through an application or software, and it starts when the user opens the app or website and then going through all of the different screens and options. It ends when the user leaves or finishes within the app or the website. So user flow is something that you will also have to create. You'll have to create a user flow diagram in week 4 as well. So I have a video available to you, and also all of these videos, I will have the slides available so you can go back and view, and you can either watch the replay or you can go back and view the slides, and the slides will also have the links to the videos so you can go and look at some of these videos more in depth.
But before we do that, what is a user flow diagram? Why does it even exist? Well, a user flow diagram is all about laying out the steps that a user might take to get from point A to point B, or maybe even point C, D, E, or F inside of your application or your website. We're mapping out all of the options that a user could take to get from the start to the finish. When we jump over to my screen, you can see the beginnings of a really basic user flow diagram inside of Figma. And there's a lot of shapes, there's a lot of colors, there's a lot of things that are happening here. But what you need to know, first of all, is that this really is a diagram. It's starting somewhere and it's leading somewhere else. It's built out of boxes and shapes and diamonds and rectangles, but really a lot of arrows and lines as we follow the path of all the actions and steps that a user might take. So let's dig in a little bit and take a look at all the individual little pieces of this user flow diagram. When we zoom into the very beginning, we can see that we have what's called an entry point. Entry points are really, really important to understand because depending whether or not it's a website or an application, the entry point could be a little bit different. For instance, in websites, a lot of times there's multiple different entry points. They could have come from social media and they've entered into a special page, a landing page, a sales funnel, and they're able to navigate around to get to that specific blog post or that specific flow somewhere in your website. Maybe you want them to sign up, become a member, or check out a certain article. There's lots of places they could come from. But inside of a mobile application or a lot of times a web application, usually there's one specific entry point. In mobile applications, they need to download your application from the store, and then they need to launch that splash screen and that introduction of your application, and then they possibly have been led to a sign up. So wherever we say entry point in our user flow diagram, we're assuming that they've gone ahead and downloaded, they've got it set up, and now they're entering the application. In web applications, it could be a simple sign up or login screen, but now they've landed into that initial step into the flow, which leads us to our next big point. Everything else that's going to follow in our user flow diagram are literally the steps to completion, all the steps that a user might take to get to that destination or that end goal that they and us are trying to get them to. So we jump back over and look at our diagram and zoom out. Every one of these, even though they might be a diamond or a rectangle, they have different iconography inside of it. Some of the lines are dotted, some of them are solid. It doesn't matter. Every single thing here represents a step to completion. It's really important that you understand that. The next thing and the last thing that every good user flow has is really the final interaction. And so we want to lead users from A to B. What is B? What does it look like? Well, when we zoom in, we see here that it's some sort of order that's been placed. The user closes that interface or that specific screen that they're on, and they are led back around to some other screen. So the final interaction and then whatever comes next. It's really, really, really important that in every single user flow diagram, you're going to have the entry point, the steps to completion, and then your final interaction or your final action. All right, let's talk now a little bit about the specifics, the nitty gritty of this user flow diagram. What do all these boxes and shapes and lines mean? Let's dive in right now and take a look. User flow diagrams are customizable and they can be completely up to you how you build them. There are some industry standards though that I want to encourage you to stick with. So let's take a look at a few of those now. A lot of times your entry and your final interaction will be a circle. It represents just that place where people are coming in and exiting your app. It's easy to identify the start and the end by using that circle shape. Next up, you'll have the rectangle. The rectangle is very ambiguous. You can make it whatever you want. I know some people do really simple plain rectangles. Some people have different shapes for everything. But rectangles for me and for most people represent some sort of screen or some sort of step along the way. And so it's the most common shape inside of the user flow. It can represent a page, a display screen. Unlike circles, there's usually no action to be taken here unless otherwise kind of annotated on the screen. You'll see that I use a lot of really basic ones. I even put these little browser dots inside of them to represent some sort of screen. This is the welcome screen. This is a screen where they're going to be selecting tasks. And then sometimes I'll actually put a little lightning bolt icon. This is just me. It represents that an action has been taken. Okay, so now we know about circles and we know a little bit about rectangles. What about this diamond right here? Well, the diamond is one of those non-negotiables actually in the user experience world. The diamond is commonly referred to as a decision diamond, and this represents whether the user will pick yes or no, up or down. Will they select or not select? Will they approve or not approve? What happens based off of this decision? And so we're going to ask a question, is this correct? Did you actually want to do this action? And then we're going to lead the user, or we're going to diagram if the user has selected yes or selected no. What happens if they do both of those things? Which is the next piece we really need to talk about, is all of these lines, okay? Everybody has different ways of doing lines, and that's okay. You can create your own legend and your own routine and workflow on how you diagram things. But a line in general leads a user from one stage to another, from one screen to another. Now, in my user flow diagrams, I tend to use solid lines to lead from one screen to another. And I tend to use dotted lines for alternate sort of pathways that the user might be able to take. For instance, in our situation here, the user had to select a task, they made the selection, and then we're going to ask the user, is that correct? Did you really want to pick that? And if so, if yes, we'll move them on. If no, there's an alternate route here that will lead them back and around to reselect that task. See, we are diagramming all the possible selections that a user might take on their journey. So it's yes or no. We're going to go ahead and annotate that. Here's a few key things you want to keep in mind when it comes to your user flow diagrams. You want to make sure that you keep your colors pretty chill and pretty minimal. Now, you can come up with different colors. For instance, in my use case, I have these dark filled blue circles versus these light blue kind of outlined rectangles, but you do want to keep it pretty minimal. Otherwise, people will start to focus a little too much on the design of the diagram and not the content. Think of this in a very similar way as a wireframe. We don't want to put too much aesthetic work into it. We just want to annotate things and give some rhyme or reason to all of our shapes. So dotted lines, solid lines, filled, outline, you decide, but really keep it very, very simple. Here's the next thing. We want to make our labels really, really meaningful. For instance, we don't want to just put the word screen. We want to put what kind of screen is there. Is it a detail screen? Is it a select task screen or a welcome screen? If we're going to move people on from a decision diamond, what were the outcomes of that decision? Is it yes or no? If it's something else, if it's approve or disapprove, we want to annotate those in our tags. For instance, here, they searched. I'm not going to put yes or no here. I'm going to put found or not found to be as descriptive as possible. Okay. Another one, be really consistent with your user flow diagrams. Make sure that if you create something or some sort of style and it has meaning, that you stick with that meaning and you don't mix or match. That way people can look at a diamond and know that that's a decision. People can look at an icon that's used and know that that's an action. People can look at a circle and know that that's the start or the end of your flow for your user. Now you might be asking yourself, okay, what comes next? After I've created this user flow diagram, what's the next step in the process? Well, the next step in the process could be to refine this user flow diagram even more. After you've created wireframes or maybe even high resolution screens, you can circle back around to your user flow diagram and replace all of your shapes with those wireframe or those high resolution screens. Then your user flow diagram becomes something a little bit more, possibly a wire flow or a screen flow, which are just higher fidelity. You can also annotate more here. You can put more detail into what each one of these screens has on it. Maybe you want to put an outline of the content here, a little bit more like a sitemap and a website. That's completely up to you. You can make all of those decisions. You, your team, your clients, create a process and a workflow. But this is the basics of a user flow diagram. Well, that's it. Those are the basics.
All right, so before we dive further into wireframes, which we'll discuss later on in the course, it is important to create that user flow diagram so that you can show how you're going to help the user have a better experience than what you see now when you're opening up the restaurant app. So let's discuss a little bit more about the assignments for week 4. But before we get into that, I would like to know, what is your biggest takeaway from the videos that you just watched? And you can drop this in the chat to everyone. It doesn't have to be a specific video. It can be from any of the videos that you saw in this live session. I just want to get an understanding of where you are in the lesson for information architecture. Um, Information architecture is something that you will focus primarily in week 4. Again, when we move on to week 5 and week 6, it's going to be a little more focused, move from organizing to actually implementing. So let's go ahead and discuss some of the assignments that we're going to cover in week 4. So we have the yellow dig discussion. I just want to put the reminder out there that it's important to engage in the yellow dig discussion. I always say start early so that you are able to, one, make sure that you hit the initial deadline, which is always Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. This allows time for you to engage with your classmates, and hopefully by Sunday, you're able to obtain the 1,000 points. And I will also engage with you in the yellow dig discussion so that you are, to make sure that you are hitting the points to get your 100%. So in the yellow dig discussion for week 4 specifically, you will have 2 posts that you will have to make. The first post for the yellow dig discussion, you will share the URL of the journey map you created, and it's going to be in Miro. So we're not going to get ahead of ourselves now because we are still in week 3, but in week 4, I will give you some more information about Miro so that you feel comfortable when you are creating your user journey map. And so when you share the URL to your user journey map, you will also answer the question, what did you learn from that exercise, and how will your user journey map inform your app redesign? And then also you will have to make a second post, which is to give feedback to your classmates on their user journey maps. So you would answer the question, why do you think your journey mapping is important in UX design? So that is something to think about beforehand, but we are still in week 3, but this is just some information I want to let you know now so that you are engaging in your yellow dig and you're able to get all of the points. So I have a few more reminders, and this is the to-do list for week 4. So I will post this in week 4, as well as more of the resources that we covered. So for your week 4 to-do list, you will have to check out the week 4 overview. Read the week 4 reading materials. There are several reading materials. It's not going to be from your textbook. This is more so from other sources, but it's really good information that you could use to apply for week 4. And then if you want, you can go back and watch the replay, which this one would be the best one to watch for week 4. But you can also go back and watch week 3 because we covered user personas. So that might be something that you want to just go back and view the replay. And if you did not get a chance to attend the live session this morning, please make sure that you go back and watch the replay, which is now up, located underneath web meetings. And definitely send your takeaways so that I can give you credit for not attending this morning's live session. Also, in week 4, you are supposed to engage in the yellow dig discussion. Again, the initial post is due by that Wednesday. And then by Sunday, your goal is to earn 1,000 points for your yellow dig discussion in week 4. Also, you will have to complete your Learn It. Your Learn It is on the topic information architecture, which is due by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Then you have 2 other assignments. Sorry, it says activity 1 and activity 1, but you have your first activity, which is card sorting. And then you'll have your second activity, which is your customer journey map. And both of those activities are due by 11:59 on Sunday. So I know we covered a lot of information, but it's very good information. Again, in week 4, I will give you a lot of other resources so you can get a better understanding of information architecture and how you're going to apply it when creating your customer journey map. So if you have any questions, please let me know. So does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, so if you don't have any questions, then this is the end of our live session. But if you do have questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. You can contact me through the text number or through the Canvas. Um, I'm very responsive through Canvas first, and I can help you with any questions or concerns or help you come up with any concepts. But if you don't have any questions,